My hot take is that product managers should promote themselves relentlessly because they believe that the work should speak for itself, while product managers who speak for themselves actually end up doing better. Start promoting yourself within your company. That will play a big role in you getting promoted and whatnot. When you begin there, you genuinely know what you've achieved that has value. Then you start going outside.
Hello and welcome to another episode of One Night in Product Hot Takes Edition, where I speak to one person about one thing, get straight to the point, and find out what's on their mind. Now, I'm taking a bit of a break from new hot takes at the moment, but you can still head over to onenightinproduct.com to find all of my old hot takes, as well as longer interviews with thought leaders and practitioners, and links to the podcast on your favourite podcast app and YouTube, where you can like, share, subscribe, leave a comment or review, and let me know what you think. Right, so in front of me, I can see a familiar face and a background that specifies very specifically that this person loves his cat. So I'm going to throw straight over to this cat lover and ask you who you are, where you're based, what it is you do, and most importantly, what's your hot take?
Hi, my name is Shobhit Chugh. I have coached 1,000 PMs as part of Intentional Product Manager. My hot take is you should love your cat. Nope. My hot take is that product managers should promote themselves relentlessly because they believe that the work should speak for itself, while product managers who speak for themselves actually end up doing better. So promote yourself.
Now, you don't have to tell me about self-promotion because I've been trying to self-promote for as long as I can remember now. And obviously, just before we kicked off recording, we were talking about some of the channels that we might do that through, including things like LinkedIn. But I guess there is this kind of, I don't know, some people are getting a little bit tired, it seems like. You see it on some of these platforms, and especially if you go to places like Reddit, you see people complaining about it all the time. I kind of feel like all these people that are just like relentlessly promoting themselves are somewhat kind of, like all hat, no cattle, like that's all they do, and they don't actually have anything to back it up. So how do you think it's possible to optimize so that you are promoting yourself and kind of speaking for the stuff that you can do, but at the same time, not looking like a kind of a vapid kind of click chasing nobody?
Yeah. Awesome. So first thing you do, don't even get into LinkedIn. Start promoting yourself within your company. Just start promoting yourself within your company, right? Like, what's the work you're doing? What are things that you're learning? Why does it tie to the end? Just build the muscle there. And the reason why that's really important is, that will play a big role in you getting promoted and whatnot, but it actually helps the company make better decisions. When they know who's doing something of value, the stakeholders can take that into account. Otherwise, they are left with a lot of noise of people who are just talking about themselves and doing really well, and all the somewhat quiet product managers that assume that the work will take care of itself and it will promote itself. It does not happen. So you begin there. When you begin there, you genuinely know what you've achieved that has value. Then you start going outside. So on LinkedIn, the way you self-promote has a lot to do with what impression other people leave of you. So you can talk about the lessons you've learned. Like one of the people I follow, she talked about how when she was building a new product for a company, she was bringing mobile. And, at that point, mobile was what AI is right now. Everybody wanted to go there, right? And she talked about how she approached mobile, and that's exactly how companies should approach AI right now. That was a really hot take because it talked about lessons she had learned with a lot of hard work, with a lot of sacrifice. It was absolutely genuine, and it spoke to real world problems that companies are facing right now. So the way you promote has a lot to do with it.
But from the outside perspective, you can look at someone like that. And again, I don't know specifically who you're talking about. Maybe we can shout them out at the end or just tell me offline. But that person obviously has done the work. They've come back and they've kind of reported some of the lessons. And that reminds me of people like Rich Mironoff, who have been out there and they've kind of worked with 200 companies or whatever like that. And they've got sure that all of them worked out, but they've kind of come back and they've sort of told some of the stories. And they're stories that are based on them. But from an external perspective, like looking or consuming someone else's self-promotion, it's very difficult for me to understand whether this person has actually done any of the things that they've said, because from a consumer perspective, both of the posts look the same because they can both, especially these days, write stuff with AI or whatever, or they can just flower the words up a little bit and make it look like they've achieved some things, or talk in generalities, or just make it look credible, but actually it's not.
Yeah.
So are there any kind of warning signs that you see when you look at this content and say, actually, I don't quite think that person has got the kind of the receipts to back up what they're saying?
Yeah. 3 warning signs. So number 1, trust your gut. Your gut is going to tell you a lot of really good things. If it's completely made up and it's basically generalized best practices, this is what you should do in the ideal world, that's bullshit, and you'll suss it out. Second, written with AI. That's also very easy to figure out now. Like AI does all these emojis and doubles, what is it called? Double dashes and
don't
M
start moaning about
dashes
the EM dash.
and M dash, exactly. And so like all those things easily show up. And then I think the third, most importantly, is you can really tell when there is a personal story behind it. Like this person, for example, name the company. Some people don't want to name the company. Okay. But like they get into like specifics that, just like in an interview, you got to get into those specifics for other people to trust you. So I think it's actually quite easy to differentiate between real and fake ones. Now, would 1% of people get past that filter and still appear credible? Sure. But you can tell them apart really fast.
Okay. But then if we sort of think about then either from an internal perspective or an external perspective, so you kind of talked about internal promotion, like promoting yourself and standing up for your achievements within an organization, which we should definitely talk about, but also outside of an organization, actually taking this stuff out to the world and then starting to use some of your hard-learned experience to maybe try and inspire other people that have, the same sorts of problems as you. But some people don't really like to show off. Like, and I'm thinking now the British, for example, we British, we're famously kind of understated, and we, kind of don't really like to take credit, and we kind of, so we don't even like compliments or anything like that. So that's a British thing, but it's also, individuals around the world. There's imposter syndrome as well. Like, for example, someone could have had a big impact on something, but at the same time, they were just a small part of it, or they thought they were just a small part of it. So is it easy for everyone to actually kind of grasp onto this and actually start standing up for themselves? Because like a lot of people, their natural instinct is going to be to try to diminish their stuff. There are books that are saying that we shouldn't take credit, and it's the PM that gets the blame, but the team that gets the credit. Like, how can we kind of get out of that mindset but not go too far?
Oh, I mean, look, I've been there. I used to struggle with even speaking up in meetings. I would be like the quietest person, like in a 45-minute, at the last 10 minutes, would I ever say anything? So I know I'm not naturally braggadocious, but I've moved past that. So what are the blocks, like what are the blocks that are coming in? Like, number 1, this sense of, hey, I'm bragging. That's not me. Like the biggest block that people get, it's not natural. And what they have to realize that there's nothing called natural here. It's just what you're familiar with and what you're unfamiliar with. Even when you start to change that terminology and saying, oh, I'm just not familiar with this yet, your mind starts to open up. Then what you do is, I always tell people, you go in like little steps. So like, could they talk about something that they did with like just friends and get some feedback? Could then they move to like a broader concentric circle? Maybe like I tell them within our community post-its. Then they go out on LinkedIn and whatnot. So you can like sort of baby step your way until all of that. But then the third thing I really want to emphasize is they also have to raise the stakes. Raise the stakes of what's at stake if you're not doing it. And, like people intellectually understand that, oh, okay, like my career will suffer and like I'm not moving as fast and like all these things will happen. You got to make it really, really real. Like what suffers is your career doesn't move as fast. You don't make as much money. You then don't save as much as you wanted for your kids, and your kids are suffering. I know I'm taking it all the way to that extreme, but you got to realize like ultimately what you are trying to build and what's at stake here. That push, along with all these baby steps and these pulls, is what gets people past that.
I guess a part of the problem in the situation that you describe is, of course, that if you don't take credit yourself and if you don't promote your own part in it, then other people potentially are going to do that for you, and they're going to go and take the credit themselves for things that maybe they had less of a position in or less of a role in, because you kind of ceded the ground to them. And it then kind of, we've all sat there, and I mean, I'm sure you have, I definitely have sat there in the past thinking like, keep my head down, get the work done. The quality of my work will be the thing that gets noticed. And then obviously like your boss gets the credit or the team gets the credit. And whilst you get some of the credit by kind of association, that you're not really getting maybe enough of the credit, certainly when it comes to your next pay round or promotion or whatever. And I think one of the things that really struck me, I mean, it was a while ago now, but I was in a position where there was like a vacancy for basically a product leadership position in the organization I was at. And I was just sitting there waiting to be kind of recognized and put forward for that, when actually they were just already going out to try and find other people to bring in. And they hadn't even considered that I even wanted that role, let alone that I'd be any good at it. And I only found out like after they'd started interviewing people that this was even happening. And I was like, but wait, hang on a minute. That should have been me at least talking about it. You didn't even bring it up. And you start to realize, of course, that other people aren't even seeing you in that kind of, in that frame. They have a different frame for you. But then I also sometimes talk about this idea of an indispensability trap. I don't know if you've ever been in this yourself, where you get so good at a certain area of job, maybe something that you're overly specialized in, or like you're always reliable in. There's always something, maybe that's not even really your job anymore, but you're kind of good. You used to be in that job and you're still quite good at it. So people can always rely on you to get that, to bring that home. And the last thing in the world that anyone wants you to be is outside of that role, because, ultimately then they'd have to hire someone else to do that role, and they'd probably do it less well than you would. So you end up kind of stuck because they don't see you as that new thing, the person that can be the next level or whatever. And all they ever see is the kind of the quiet work that you're doing, that you've proven adept at, but you've never pushed yourself onto the next step or put yourself in the frame of mind or their frame of reference, so that they know that you're the next thing.
I take away two things from what you said. Like, one is the visibility piece. It's just that, even in the consideration set, you just did not appear because, just like how LinkedIn, there could be a lot of noise. Within the organization, it could be a lot of noise. In the job search market, there's a lot of noise. And so you were never in the consideration set. But there's a second aspect as well, which is, okay, even if you're in the consideration set, by claiming or establishing yourself and positioning yourself the right way, which means by self-promoting to some extent, you also build the trust factor, where people are like, okay, this assignment, this new job, I can trust this person. And I've seen people, I work a lot on job search. I've seen people who were absolutely perfect fits and they could not get the job because of how much they were able to promote or not. Like, literally, one of my students told me that she was the product manager for the product that this company was trying to buy, implement, and hire an internal product manager. She couldn't get like a job where she was like absolutely 100% fit. And now she was able to get a lot more offers. And it's all because that the confidence with which she was able to say, I did all this, of course, I worked with the team, but I did all this. And that made a huge difference. So the trust factor is also as important.
Yeah, there's kind of, I guess there's two elements to this kind of, getting a job, for example, because on the one hand, you sit there and you say, well, a lot of people out there, and, obviously, you spoke about looking at people trying to get jobs. I've tried to help people with CVs, resumes a little bit as well, try and help people in what is obviously a very tricky market. And I think on the one hand, it is very fair to say that there's a lot of these resumes out there that are just kind of poor, like whether or not they're not that they're poor because they're no good, but because they've made a bad job of explaining why they're special, and they maybe don't even really understand the small amount of time that people are even going to look at these things before they make a decision about whether to advance them on. And I know that there are a lot of people out there that are doing kind of CV coaching, resume coaching now. So like there's other people that are definitely better at that, but it's a very important point. But then on the other hand, there are people out there that very much advocate for, well, you do need to be present on, for example, LinkedIn, on social media. You need to be kind of creating content, grinding it out, because that's how you differentiate in a crowded market. But one of the things that I've seen and to some extent experienced myself in the past, at least in a small way, is almost like a suspicion by certain types of leader, by certain types of hiring manager, that someone who's effectively building their own content engine to try to promote themselves and build their own reputation, etc., external from their job, that they might almost be a little bit suspicious that that person's going to spend a little bit too much time doing that, even when they've got the new job. And actually, they'd rather just get someone who didn't have that, who they know is going to be kind of dedicated to the job that they're coming into. So do you see that? Have you seen that? Have you heard any stories about people maybe being held a little bit in suspicion simply because people feel maybe they care more about their own image than they do about the job that they're going to get?
I think it's very much possible in some cases that could happen. But I'll give you the reverse story. So, while I was at Google, I was working on intentional product manager and, relentlessly talking about LinkedIn, like mentioning my program, all these things. So when it finally came time to leave, I had a conversation with a manager. I told her I was doing this, and I was like, oh, it must be obvious to you because, I've been posting it on LinkedIn that at some point this will happen. She was like, no, like, okay, you're talking, so do other product managers. What does that have to you staying here? How can you leave? You cannot leave. And like, it was completely surprised. So people spend a very, very limited amount of time thinking about you. They just don't do, you spend a lot more time thinking about that. There would be I agree, there will be some managers who are like, oh no, that's a risk. I'm not going to take the risk. But I think it's like 1%, a small minority. Everybody understands that LinkedIn has become more important than your resume because people believe it more because it's public. And so they're much more likely before your interview to actually go to your LinkedIn and review it rather than spending a lot of time on your resume. So I think it's an important thing. And content shows up ahead of your experience in the order in which the page happens. So that's why it also becomes important from that perspective.
Yeah, one bit of advice I did get, kind of echoing some of what you just said, is that no one thinks about your career as much as you do. So if you want other people to think about it, you've actually got to put it in front of their face. That was actually in the context of that job that I didn't even get put forward for at the time. Kind of part of the sort of the wash up after that was like, oh yeah, no, maybe I should have been a bit more, effectively self-promotional within the context of the company. I guess the only tricky situation within companies is when you feel potentially that you're being expressly pushed down, I guess, effectively, which I coach a bunch of people. I know that not everyone's in a good, well-functioning, psychologically safe organization. And sometimes it feels that if they try to do that sort of thing, that they would get pushed back. But I guess that then leads to the obvious question. Like, so you talked a little bit about, build internal credibility, then maybe push some of that stuff externally. But if someone's sitting here listening to this now thinking, well, look, I'm doing some good work, doesn't really feel like it's being recognized. I'm struggling to build influence within the organization. I want to start doing that, but I don't really know where to go. What's like the first step that you would say someone needs to sort of embrace or the first step they need to take to try to start going down that path?
Yeah. Start sending status reports. Sounds incredibly boring. Sounds like, oh, like nobody's going to read it. But when you articulate things well, and especially if you talk about the highlights, the updates that people really care about, and above all, the learnings, the customer learnings you've had, the learnings you've had working as a team, and start to do that on a weekly basis, what you'll start to see is the week you don't send it, people will ask you, hey, what happened to that? I actually do read it, although no one ever replied. So that is the smallest, that's the smallest step you can take. Then from that, you build out externally. Externally, you also have to think about what do you actually want to be known for and build it with that and not just status update. So it's a little bit more work, but you can start internally and get a lot of visibility that way.
I think on that first point, there's also a certain amount of storytelling that needs to be kind of sort of ground into your process as well, like a little bit of spice on the top, because ultimately what you get, or what I've seen is with these types of update, is you just get frankly, I used to send them as well, like just a 200 paragraph email, just starting from Monday going all the way down to Friday, and like all of the interesting stuff is in there, but it's kind of hidden. And one of the things, I mean, I recommend this book all the time now. There's a book called The First Minute, which is all about executive communication and trying to get to the point and stick to the things that people really care about, because no one's got time anymore. No one wants to read a big long email. And, I even find myself, if I do write an email these days, or update or whatever, just kind of almost like a JSON GPT, kind of just manually summarizing it at the top, like the key points. Like, if you know anything after you've read this, know this stuff. Then if you want the other stuff, you can carry on reading. But if you only need to know the highlights, then it's this and it's at the top. And if you do that, then you make it easy for people to consume, versus, oh my God, Jason sent another email around now and I don't have any time to read it. Because then you might as well not send it, right?
Yeah, TLDR, too lazy, did not read, is perfect for that, yeah.
All right. Well, this is your chance now to, I guess, promote yourself. So if people want to come and find you after this and talk about maybe some of the stuff that you mentioned here, or find out all the other stuff you're doing, where can they come and find you?
LinkedIn. My first and last name together, Shobhit Chugh. Easiest way to connect with me, follow me, and whatnot.
Well, I will make sure to link that into the show notes, and hopefully, algorithms willing, you'll get some people come and follow you and see some of your stuff. But all I can do now is thank you for your hot take.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason. Appreciate it.